This is an interesting subject that I had to take a bit of time looking into. And I had to, rewrite the video. Well, only the beginning section because it's kind of a complex, I guess, I suppose. And that complex subject would just be, YouTubers and their audience. And, the specific type of audience and YouTubers, that I'm talking about together, I guess it would just be commentary or, social YouTubers, I suppose. I'll go more in depth in the next clip.
Women. Marlo isn't the sole indicator of how amazing girls can be in competitive games, and losing her doesn't signal the collapse of the female gaming sphere. I feel this only happened because people still expect for us to prove that we have a place in the gaming community. One thing I've noticed about the Marlo drama is how everyone was so quick to make this about gender bias and misogyny, when I think it's not the core of the issue. By centering the Marlo drama on these things, you are just dragging us down with her by making it seem like gender bias and misogyny is something women can weaponize when that wasn't the reason why Marlo was so successful. Marlo wasn't successful because she weaponized sexism, she was successful because she worked herself up with what technical skills she had, putting herself in a position where she can silence people she wants to silence and hide the fact that
I had to cut it off, but this is very important to think about because this is partially, there's some stuff I do agree with. Well, half I do agree with, and the other half I don't agree with because there's a little bit of dishonesty. Marlo did really well because Marlo's audience wasn't expecting that in the first place. No one has ever really done anything that Marlo did on that scale before. And Marlo had a lot of prep time to make sure nothing went wrong. Now, someone who did not care much about prep time as Marlo, maybe they would have been caught. But Marlo is different because Marlo went out of her way just to make sure anyone looking into their past will have to at least take some time before being able to, do something about, their deception. There will be 3 conditions before exposing Marlo. The first one is having the intuition that Marlo is, being deceptive. Now, this could happen at the first year or even the last year. But while you're getting there, you would have to be able to find whatever evidence that you can get your hands on. And, number 2, that's just being willing to look that far for the evidence and take a decent amount of time. Which some people, they may not even care about. But if they get past the second and first condition, the third condition would be the strongest one, which would be, hey, if you went after Marlo during year 5 or year 6, Marlo at this point has a decent amount of money to say, hey, I'm just going to sue you until you're dead if your video is popular enough for me to see it. Well, from Marlo's perspective, it's like, okay, this video is popular and people are going to see this, so I have to do something to save my business. In Marlo's perspective. Now, someone wouldn't financially crucify themselves just to stop Marlo's business. The average person who was able to clear condition 1 and 2. I'm going to add in one more clip just so I can use that for extra context to speak about, because that is at least a little important.
she was cheating because she owns the tier list. All of Marlo's plans would fall apart if she wasn't able to secure that position of power. With Marlo being exposed as a guy posing as a girl, I get that you would think the conversation of gender bias would be relevant, but I don't think gender bias gives us the advantage that you may think. Girls are often seen as a rarity in the gaming community, which may give them more visibility at first because they're seen as a novelty, but this popularity is only sustained through their personality and skill, at which point are you still supporting them solely for their gender or for the person that they are? I would even argue that this doesn't give us enough visibility to even be considered as an advantage, because at the end of the day, all the most popular Minecraft YouTubers are all men. And as a casual Minecraft player myself,
Now, I had to cut off a clip because, well, at this point, I'm going to talk about, well, I'm going to introduce, like, a hidden layer of context, which is at least a little important for the Marlowe situation. And that would be, Marlowe didn't exactly do anything more than what she had to. And in that context, it would be, okay, yes, I am basically, well, cheating and using an AI voice, but that's the only thing I'm doing. Those are the only two things I'm doing. So if someone wants to say, hey, I'm going to expose you for, well, being an EDP, that's not exactly going to be effective in no way, shape, or form. So it's like someone who is going to expose Marlowe would be someone who specifically cares about cheating and a false identity. So basically, Marlowe created a specific area where she can only be attacked from. Because if they did it from somewhere else, like a specific, something else, like, hey, you're actually a very evil person, that's not going to be effective because Marlowe is not guilty of that. So, someone who was planning to expose Marlowe, they would have to be very specific and make sure nothing else is exactly false that they're accusing Marlowe of. Because any false evidence can be used against the accuser, and the accuser would lose credibility because the accuser, well, didn't, verify their evidence and make sure that is actually true. Now, the final part, which is kind of scary, is that, okay, the type of person that Marlowe was, to do all of this until start to finish, is kind of important to think about. At least a little. Because not just the average person can do this without Marlowe's level of, well, cautiousness. And also the amount of prepping that Marlowe had to do before this. Now, I can promise you that the average person who has an active morality system in their brain actively working, they would not think of half the stuff that Marlowe did as a contingency plan. Like, being able to do all of that stuff goes beyond just gender bias or gender discrimination. By all means, gender bias is only a tool. It's not the crutch. It's like something that it's only one of the tools that's used. Because you're also counting on most people to believe you, and the ones who don't, and then the ones who are willing to stand up against you, you have a contingency plan for them. So they're already at a losing playing field. Okay, by all means, referencing the previous clips of that one girl's video, it was never about gender bias. But instead, it's about, Marlowe being an opportunist. An opportunist wouldn't exactly focus on gender bias for their business. But instead, an opportunist would think about, okay, what is the average person going to think about when they're looking at my content? But also, what is someone who would be willing to doubt my content and its authenticity? And also, how would I counter against that? And basically give diminishing returns to someone who's actually willing to clear all of those conditions. So, by all means, it's no longer about the average person, the average misogynist, the average person who says, hey, you're being misogynistic, but it goes above that. It goes to the specific type of people who plans for those reactions. It's not about, hey, I'm gonna pretend to be a girl because I believe people like female gamers, but the female gamer is the scarecrow. There's more things happening in the background. So it's like, okay, if someone tries to remove the scarecrow, I have a contingency plan for them. But also, there's other stuff that they'll also have to take down if they fully care about what I'm actually doing. So also, even if they do that, even if they all do clear those conditions, there will still be consequences if they don't prepare well enough. So now, if we just take a simple walk back to the clip and think about, hey, why didn't this girl talk about Marlowe's character, which heavily influenced everything that has went on? And the reason why she didn't talk about that is she wouldn't want to encourage any more upcoming Marlows. Because a person who already is similar to Marlowe, looking at that video and then thinking about, well, I do have a similar way of thinking to Marlowe, if that was to be mentioned, that would unleash a lot more destruction. Because in the first place, that Marlowe-like person would never actually have good-sided intentions. But instead, it's more like, okay, I don't know what I want to do, but you just gave me the idea of what I was going to do. And I happen to personally like that idea. So, yeah, I'm going to do this, but thank you for letting me know. But a simpler way to think about it is say, okay, why did she leave this out? You can just condense it into, hey, I'm going to upload a blade swinging video. However, there's going to be a piece of knowledgeable information, which it's not really about the safety of doing that, but it's about how else you can use the blade. Now, the hidden information is about how would you slice people's necks with the blade without you getting harmed in any way, and also it uses the least amount of energy, so you can do it multiple times in a row. However, that information would obviously stay hidden because that would encourage people who have bad intentions to use that blade for obviously, bad intentions. But if I leave this out in an obvious way, the people who are thinking about this, they know that I'm avoiding that for that particular reason. Because, well, it does more harm than good. Because the people who have bad intentions, well, they're being told, how do I do this thing that I would want to do? So the conclusion is that Marlowe's character is really strong. Marlowe's character heavily benefited the success of everything Marlowe wanted to do up until this point. Up until, well, someone was able to completely hard counter Marlowe's plan. And so it's like, okay, if this type of person who's able to be this determined to put in this much work and to put in this much prep time, I wouldn't want to encourage more people who think like that in case they in case they purposely want to use that level of determination and thinking to put me 3 feet under socially, of course. Like a YouTuber wouldn't want to, well, in this case, a YouTuber wouldn't want to specifically have competition that would screw that YouTuber over. If that YouTuber could do anything about it, of course. Which this YouTuber, the girl in the clip, she went out of her way not to mention this. Also, before we end the video, this is something to think about is that this would go under the category of a social rule. And that social rule is necessary omission. So necessary omission is like something you have to leave out, because if it's kept in, it will do more harm than good when it goes to its audience that would look at the information.